hedge funds, and the machinery of extraction, or whether it belongs to the people who actually make the city run, the workers, the neighbors, the caregivers, the artists, the teachers, the elders, the young people, the people trying to survive and love each other with dignity in the midst of all this chaos. Now, listen, I'll be honest with y'all about why I'm still invested in this work after all these years. Part of it is because I happen to be a bleeding heart lefty tree hugger who is deeply attracted to good trouble. So, don't tempt me with a good time. But seriously, I'm invested in making the world safer for Black people, for people of color, for poor and working people, for queer folks, for immigrants, for people at the margins of society, and for everybody who still believes a more equitable and inclusive world is worth fighting for.
Yeah.
Right on. But I also believe there has to be more to this work than struggle. I don't believe movement spaces should only feel like exhaustion or doom scrolling, panic and survival. Although, those feelings are very real. I believe this work can and should be joyful, full of good vibes, good food, good music, good people, and good conversations. Moments where we actually practice the kind of world we're trying to create. That's what this annual celebration is all about. And I'm gonna keep it real. This gathering is not primarily about fundraising. Although we do need the bread, baby. We do need the bread. But big shout out to all of our sustaining supporters holding us down. If you're a sustaining supporter, you give monthly, just raise your hand. Hey, all right, give it up for our sustaining supporters. You can be just like them. But more than anything, this gathering is about practicing our principles together. It's about reminding ourselves that cooperation is not just an economic model, it's a social relationship. It's about remembering that solidarity is something we experience with our bodies, not just something we post online. And it's about continuing to dream of the better world together, because when we're together, sometimes we can actually glimpse it. So today, you're gonna hear updates from the Cleveland Owns team and get a glimpse into the work of our broader collaborative universe. We'll also hear from our distinguished keynote speaker, Pouya Najmaie, from Cooperative Energy Futures in Minneapolis, who is helping build a future where communities collectively own and govern clean energy infrastructure. And before I pass the mic, I'd like to acknowledge my fellow board members in the space today. So if you're a Cleveland Owns board member, please stand and let's show them some love. And finally, one more thank you. You could have been anywhere in the world today, but you're here with us. So thank you for believing that another world is possible. Thank you for helping us grow the fruits of our labor. And without further ado, I'd like to bring up Cleveland Owns fearless leader, or lead organizer, excuse me, Jonathan Welle, to help get this show on the road.
Hey, how about a round of applause for Mordecai? We are so lucky to have Mordecai's leadership. 7 years ago, Mordecai and I started this adventure together, and we've learned a lot along the way, and definitely one of the things, if I could go back 7 years and make a decision again, I would 100% make a decision to invite Mordecai to join us on this journey. It's really been an absolute pleasure. I think he demonstrated that very clearly today with his insight and his wisdom, and along the way, he's been a nurturing hand, offering direction at every step as we've navigated this 7 years together. Also, how about the food today? Anybody have some good food? That's from Holly. our friend at That Brown Girl Spice, which is a catering company that Holly runs for 2 years. Holly worked at Cleveland Owns full-time. And we got to spend a lot of time together understanding what it takes to bring this model to life. So I'm really glad that Holly is back in our world. I think she had to leave early, but her food stays with us. And there's more, so y'all feel free to dig in, help yourself to a second plate. I'll also reiterate the announcement. The bathrooms here through this door in this room on your left side. There's another bathroom if that's occupied. You can go through the gym here and find bathrooms in St. Paul's. And then let's give it up for St. Paul's for hosting us today. How about this beautiful space? I mean, we lucked out on the weather, but the beauty of this space is not luck, that is stewardship. You can tell a lot of love goes into planting these flowers and keeping this place fresh. Beautiful play gym for the kiddos today. So I'm grateful that St. Paul's is having us over. Look, at the heart of what we're doing at Cleveland Owns, I think Mordecai said it well, but I want to reiterate. At the heart of what we're doing is a hopeful idea, which is that there is an alternative. That there is an alternative to an extractive economic system. That there's an alternative to an economic system that builds data centers instead of affordable housing. That there is an alternative to an economic system that entrenches a racial wealth gap. That those things are things we've created as society that we do not have to continue to abide by. And that in fact that there is an alternative. And that's a hopeful message. So I want you to share that message with a neighbor today. Can you turn to your neighbor and say, there is an alternative? And can you turn to your other neighbor and say, there is an alternative? There is an alternative. And now let's say that together on 3. There is an alternative. 1, 2, 3. There is an alternative. Let's do it louder. 1, 2, 3. There is an alternative. There is an alternative. And that's important that we hold on to that, because so many folks tell us the opposite. There is no alternative is a common myth. People say there is no alternative to this extractive economic system. And you might hear we're at the end of history. You know, we've innovated all we need to. Both those things are false. In fact, there is an alternative. And the work at Cleveland Owns is to fumble and stumble and slowly work our way towards not just telling people that there is an alternative, but actually showing people that there is an alternative. And that's the work we try to do every day with our small team of 6 at Cleveland Owns. Can I just get a quick hand raise from the 6 team members, those of us who work at Cleveland Owns? Craig, Prerna, Najah, Cassie. These folks are holding it down, and we're learning together every day how to build that world and how to do it in a way that's aligned with our values. And it's long and slow work. I'm going to be honest, we're 7 years in, and there are some goals we set out to accomplish that we have not accomplished in 7 years. Like in 2019, at our first board meeting, we set out a big vision, and one of the ideas of that big vision was we said 5 years from now. In 5 years, we're going to start a campaign with residents of Cleveland to buy the Cleveland Cavaliers. We made a strategic decision not to do that. I still think it's a great idea. And someday, I hope that the co-op community in Cleveland has enough power to make an actual play, to actually try to buy the Cleveland Cavaliers. But we strategically decided to focus on some other things. And along the way, we've learned a lot of lessons about what things work. You're going to hear about 3 of the progress updates from projects that I think are working really well. We've also learned along the way that some of the best wins are the leadership that we're developing. Certainly in ourselves and also in the 100+ people who engage with our programming and our learning activities every year. And those are seeds that we're planting that we don't know when they're going to bear fruition, but we know that we're stronger because of it. That leadership looks like taking action to organize your neighborhoods. That leadership looks like building our political imagination, as Mordecai said, exercising this muscle of science fiction, of imagining what this alternative actually looks like. Today's a great day because we bring all of our folks together and we get to celebrate. I'm glad that each of you is here. Thanks for being here at this celebration. One of the reasons I'm glad that each of you is here is because I find it inspiration from so many of you of what it looks like to build the world as it should be, to build that next system. And examples abound. Ricardo's here from the Workers Center. I'm just going to call out a few folks who inspire me. Ricardo at the Workers Center is making is working hard to build a world where workers have the dignity and the power that they need in their workplace. That's an act of creating the new system as it should be. I'm going to point out Pat Murray, who has spent a lifetime experimenting with ways in this neighborhood to actually prove that there is another system, whether that comes from supporting the Catholic worker, whether that comes from building, I think there's a new rumor about a senior-focused housing co-op. Pat Murray inspires many of us in this room to imagine a different world. And I believe Catherine is here from Legal Aid, and Catherine from Legal Aid every day finds corners in this legal system where folks can live and breathe in a new way and actually build slowly towards reimagining what that new system needs to look like. Catherine inspires me as well. And each one of you here actually took a step towards inspiration by just being here, by showing up, by putting a little bit of faith in this idea that there is an alternative by supporting Cleveland Owns. So I'm thankful that you're here. Many folks also do so as a sustaining supporter. Yes, this is a fundraiser, so I have to say this. We're thankful for the work that you do as sustaining supporters with a monthly donation, whether that monthly donation is $2 or $20, or we have one person, $150. Special thanks to that person. I'm going to do something foolish and read you the first names of the 60 people who are sustaining supporters. So please bear with me. I'll do this quickly, but just a lot of gratitude to each of these folks. And then we're going to get into some project updates. Okay, here goes. Abe, Addison, Alex, Amber, Anna, Arame, Benjamin, Brian, Bryn, Kamala, Catherine, Cristobal, Danielle, David B, David F, David G, Deborah B, Deborah L, Douglas, Elise, Eric, Evan, Jeffrey, Grace, Hans, Jed, Jeffrey, John, Juan, Justin, Kara, Ken, Karina, Kimberly, Lizzie, Marge, Michael R, Molly B, Molly M, Monica, Mordecai, Nat, Nathan, Nina, Paige, People's Plumbing Co-op, Rohan, Sarah, Stephanie, Stephen, Steve, Teresa, Thomas, Timothy, and Trevor. How about a round of applause for our sustainers? Thank you all very much. So today we're going to hear updates from 3 projects that we've been working on for a long time. Projects that are near and dear to our hearts that we see as coming to fruition this year. By the way, how about a quick shout out to Cassie for this amazing mural, demonstrating that we are growing the fruits of our labor. So let me introduce our housing co-op organizer. Here's Prerna to tell us about our housing co-op work. Let's welcome Prerna.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here with all of you. So my name is Prerna. For the last 1.5 years, I've had the pleasure of stewarding our co-op housing organizing. At its core, co-op housing is about living cooperatively, living democratically, and our residents owning the housing that they live in. So rather than an extractive landlord or property management company coming in and telling you how to live or whether or not you deserve hot water tomorrow, it's y'all, the people that live there, making those decisions together. And so our co-op housing program has really followed 3 major tenets. Education, sharing with people that cooperative housing is real. It's a thing you do beyond living in college when you're 19 years old. That it's happening around Cleveland. There's a bunch of different co-op housing projects, and so really getting to document all of those. And then organizing, working with groups of tenants and residents who want to build power through the ways in which they live. And so the project that I'm really excited to get to share with all of you is our Plaza Suites Housing Co-op project. I see a couple residents of Plaza Suites. Can y'all raise your hands? Woo! So for over a year, almost 2 years now, a really solid crew of people have been working to convert this very historic 27-unit apartment building in Midtown Cleveland into a resident-controlled co-op. And a lot of their values are on democratic governance and affordability. They desire to keep housing permanently affordable and are exploring equity and entity structures in order to do that. So far they have incorporated as a co-op, and the lawyer that has helped them do that is also here. So I'd love to shout out Ange for all of your amazing work in the co-op legal sphere. Talk to Ange if you want to help building a co-op, also me. We also have an amazing group of residents that have come together to plan social events and try to onboard new residents, get more folks in there. And now we're in the process of entering into a due diligence period with the landlord where we can really assess, is this building viable? And can we get the money together in order to purchase this building? So it's a really, really exciting step in the direction of showing people in Cleveland, showing our neighbors, our friends, like this is possible. We can cooperatively own and live in our housing and remain permanently affordable, something that's really, really hard to do as rent and housing prices just keep increasing in this city. Another big thing that we've gotten to do this year is take a very awesome group of people to Bloomington with the support of some amazing community members who are also here. I'd love to shout out Sue and Ray for helping us get that together. Sue and Ray, can y'all raise your hands? And we have a couple folks that got to go to Bloomington Cooperative Living. Will y'all raise your hands if you got to go to Bloomington? And so we got to learn from a group of around 90 people in total who have all created 5 different types of housing that they have created to remain permanently affordable, how to build these structures of housing. So a lot of our programming is learning together, learning from each other, and then organizing and building together. So the last step that we kind of have for our housing program this year is we're going to run another cohort of our co-op housing study group. It's an 8-week class curriculum designed to tell you what housing co-ops are, how you build them, and what are the cooperative culture skills you need to make that happen. So we'll be launching that in the fall of this year. If you put your email down at our check-in table, you'll definitely get updates, and I'll also be around all morning today to get to talk to y'all more about co-op housing. So thank you all so much for your time. I'm really excited to welcome our next program area, PB Clee, and our program manager, Najah. Something that's really exciting about thinking through all of these different program areas is how they intersect. So Najah's gonna talk about a participatory budgeting program. What would it look like if that also included co-op housing or community-owned energy or community workplaces? And so yeah, I'll welcome Najah on stage.
Hey y'all. I'm very soft-spoken. Can everybody hear me? Yes. Okay, don't change your mind later. So PB Clee, the People's Budget Cleveland, launched Cleveland's first ever People's Budget pilot. We're in Slavic Village. You look like you can't hear. You good? Okay. So Slavic Village, some of you may not be familiar. It's a neighborhood with a deep history of disinvestment. It's a community that's been for a long time asking for real power over real decisions. So over the past several months, we've moved through the first 3 phases of our PB process. We've recruited and trained a neighborhood steering committee. That's our resident leaders who are driving this process. We held idea collection, where community members came out and they told us what they needed by submitting their ideas in person or online. And we've just completed, come on now, Win. We've just completed proposal development, where we have folks who are budget delegates, those are everyday residents who stepped into a formal leadership role to turn those 125 ideas that we collected into 25 full proposals with budgets and timelines and implementation plans. So right now we're in a very critical transition where the neighborhood steering committee is reviewing the proposals and preparing to vote on which of those will advance to a community ballot. And we also have our program evaluation team now who's on the ground with us, documenting the process in real time. So what we learn, we can use to help us in our next iteration, as well as helping other communities do this work. So looking ahead, community voting is coming. That's where residents of Slavic Village will have a direct say through their vote in how this $100 will be spent in their neighborhood. And after the vote,
$100,000.
what did I say? $100,000. Okay, and then after the vote, those winning projects will move into implementation, and we'll have the neighborhood steering committee to monitor that work and what actually happens. So we're talking about democracy in action. We're talking about real power over real money and real decisions by the people most affected, and we are almost there. So what did you say, Jonathan? There is an alternative. Oh, we have one of our neighborhood steering committee members members here. Janet. And I'm gonna bring up Craig, who's gonna talk about our solar collection.
All right.
Hi, everyone. My name is Craig. I'm the Energy Democracy Organizer with Cleveland Owns. It's so great to be here today. I'm intensely proud of the work we do here at Cleveland Owns and proud to be a part of it. Before we talk about energy democracy, I do want to acknowledge, this has been a difficult year. We started off with the illegal and brazen kidnapping of the president of Venezuela by the United States government. Shame. We've seen that same war machine turned on our brothers and sisters in Iran, killing thousands and destroying civilian infrastructure like bridges and schools. Shame. And so whether it's the mountains of Appalachia or the Straits of Hormuz, this is the logic of fossil fuel capitalism. The need to extract, to steal, to destroy, and control fossil fuels like coal, oil, and natural gas. And this is the outcome of our centralized energy system that puts the wants and profits of investor-owned utilities like First Energy and oil companies like ExxonMobil first, and our needs last. And this is why we fight for energy democracy. Energy democracy is a vision of our energy system where those who are most impacted by the failures and injustices of the system are put first. Where communities like ours get control and see real benefits from the energy system that we already pay for each and every month. And so here at Cleveland Owns, we do that work through helping our neighbors come together and develop community-owned solar through Cleveland Solar Cooperative. Last year, we signed our first power purchase agreement with Lakeside Bible Church. Yeah. And this is a document that set in motion our work for this year. Working with our team of lawyers, many of whom are here today, working to build and build the infrastructure we need for folks to invest in and build Ohio's first community-owned solar array. Yeah. Now, this first array is small, about the size you find on a single-family home, but like our favorite iceberg metaphor, it's just what you see that's visible, right? Because beneath that array is a church of passionate folks who care about East Cleveland and care about their community and see this array as an expression of that care. An investment not just in their church, but a piece of community wealth that cannot be bought and sold to the highest bidder. And alongside them are 100 other member owners of Cleveland Solar Cooperative from every corner of Northeast Ohio. And all of us together are fighting for a better energy system. Our member owners have turned out for community energy. It's a powerful policy that would make it easier for our cooperative to build more solar arrays and for folks to see those benefits and savings on their electricity bills each month. We've written hundreds of pieces of testimony, we've driven down to Columbus and back, and we've engaged our local elected leaders to pass supporting resolutions. And like I said last year, this array is the first, but it will not be the last. Community energy will not be the high mark of our movement, but the first sign of a rising tide. I can see a future where we have hundreds, not hundreds of member owners, but thousands. We have dozens of arrays on church rooftops, on apartment complexes, on housing cooperatives, providing pollution-free energy that powers our movement and keeps our bills permanently affordable. Where our investor-owned utilities are now owned by the public, and they serve us, and they're led by our communities. A future where our neighbors are deciding where and what energy their communities need democratically, because they know best. And how do I know this? Because we are not doing this work alone. From Alaska to Puerto Rico, communities like ours are fighting back, and they're building. They're fighting back against corrupt investor-owned utilities. They're building innovative solutions to end blackouts and stop shutoffs. And they're learning how to heat and cool their homes without carbon pollution. And so this is what a cooperative outside of, or in Minneapolis has done and is still doing. If folks have heard me talk for more than 5 minutes, I've definitely mentioned them. Cooperative Energy Futures has nearly 2,000 member owners and subscribers. They have currently put $35 million of community-owned community solar gardens into the ground, and they're working on an additional $200 million more in the next few years. They're leveraging their size to work on energy efficiency and thermal energy districts, and they have built their seat at the table. and they help to shape energy policy that benefits all Minnesotans, especially those who have been most impacted by the current energy system. Cooperative Energy Futures does this work in a city with a deep co-op network, a city that has also been a shining example of the fight against authoritarianism. Hundreds of thousands of Minnesotans have stood up against the ICE invasion, against this regime of terror. They have stood fast and proud. And as important as fighting, they have provided deep care for their neighbors. And this is why I'm deeply honored that Pouya, the Policy and Regulatory Director of Cooperative Energy Futures, has decided to spend his weekend with us. Our friend Pouya was born in Iran, has lived all over the Midwest, but has called Minneapolis home for the last 3 decades. He has a background in environmental science and policy with the University of Minnesota, and he has been central to the movement for energy democracy. And in addition to his work in Minnesota, working with legislators and policymakers, organizing coalitions and community members, he also serves on the board of the Energy Democracy Project and the People's Solar Energy Fund. And again, I'm really just hitting the tip of the iceberg here, but I'd love to welcome our keynote speaker up, Pouya, and please give him a round of applause.
Well, hey everyone. My name is Pouya Najmaie from Minneapolis. As Craig mentioned, he took half my speech up telling what I'm about, but I am the Policy and Regulatory Director for Cooperative Energy Futures. A lot of my work is at the Public Utilities Commission in Minnesota, and also I'm a lobbyist at the Capitol. And I also do a lot of national movement work, which is where I met Jonathan and Craig. So they also do a lot of national movement work. Y'all should be proud. Thank you for having me here. I'd like to talk just a little bit about CEF first, tell you a little bit about what we do. We're a Minnesota-based, member-owned, democratically run renewable energy co-op. We focus on low and moderate income communities and also communities that have been historically underrepresented, underdeveloped. We look at energy through the lens of what's called energy democracy. So the concept of being that as we switch into the green transition, we need to prioritize people who have been the most harmed by the current energy and economic system in jobs and also in ownership and wealth of and control agency over their energy and their energy decisions. We started in 2007 with 4 staff. I joined in, actually it was 3 staff then. I joined in 2015, which brought us up to 4 staff. And we were at 4 for a while until 2021. And then now we've jumped up to 17 staff. So we've grown sort of exponentially just in the last 5 years. We have 1,500 member owners right now. About 1,500, somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000. And we have, sort of as Craig was mentioning, is $35 million worth of operating projects. That's about 15 megawatts of solar arrays. And just for a little perspective, a megawatt is about 150 to 200 houses, depending on obviously the load of that house. And we have 15 of those. And because of the ending of the ITC tax credits and this wonderful administration's attitude towards renewable energy, we are doubling down on our pipeline, and we have 88 megawatts in our pipeline right now, hoping to develop most of all that within 4 years. We also have a low-income residential solar program where we have about 238 kilowatts going right now and another 193 in the pipeline. And we have a low-income energy efficiency program in Minneapolis or in Minnesota right now. The energy efficiency programs will deal with low-income people, but you still have to take out a loan once they tell you how much you need to do your house. We have eliminated that process, and we have funding now. We're developing funding, and we have some funding right now so that it is a pay-as-you-save method. So there's no money up front. We also have hired, and that's been going, by the way, the energy efficiency for about 6 months now, and it took about a year to ramp that up. And now we're in our ramp up of our next program, which is a geothermal energy network program. So we're talking about 300-foot deep wells that go into the ground, take advantage of the stable temperature of the ground, and there's an ambient temperature loop with liquid that goes through, and a bunch of, it's kind of set up like a network or a campus. So a series of houses, maybe 2-3 blocks or a campus is all going to be connected. We haven't built it yet, but we have hired a director a year ago. They're working on it, and we are well on our way to starting our new geothermal network program and first project. Yeah, and interesting. Thank you. Interesting side note that's coincidental and has an Ohio connection with us. We hired about 2 months ago our new director of operations. His name is Tyler Furman. I don't know if any of you recognize that name, but he was the main whistleblower in the HB6 controversy, the one who testified for the FBI and wore the mics. He was the one who was in charge of the repeal HB6 campaign, and then was contacted by Matt Borges, a Republican lobbyist, and told to give inside information, and he turned them in. And Tyler moved away from Ohio. He felt unsafe in Ohio after that. Moved to Minnesota, I think this was 3 years ago, and recently we hired Tyler. So a very nice addition to our team. And Tyler's a former Republican, as I don't know if you all know that, but he was a former Republican, moved to Minnesota with a very different attitude, has been changing, and since he's joined Cooperative Energy Futures, which is very far left overall politically, I can just see it in his eyes, a new transformation happening currently as we speak. So I have a proposition for y'all today, my main thesis, and that is, in these times right now, what we're going through, I think the biggest thing we need right now is the idea of cooperativism, communalism, working in coalitions, broad-based democratic coalitions. I think that's what we need right now. Let me just go over, and I don't think I need to lecture anyone on all the things going wrong right now, but I just want to pick out a small list as we can kind of name these things out. One of them is wealth concentration is ridiculous right now. We are in another gilded era, maybe worse than the 1920s gilded era for wealth concentration and disparity between the wealthy and the poor. The cost of living is rising, as we all see, as we all know, especially as we enter wars in the Middle East, where a lot of the energy comes from, and oil and gas being fungible raises prices for all of us, even here as we are energy producers. Money in politics, well, HB6. Yeah, I don't have to tell anyone from Ohio about the issue with money in politics, but I think we all know it's a national, state level, it's in every single level, the county level right now, and it's bad. Attacks on workers and unions. As we know, they are being attacked. Currently, the union density, union participation since the 1970s has plummeted, although we are starting to pick it back up recently, which is a nice thing. There's also, thank you, there's also recent attacks on renewable energy. As I mentioned earlier, the current administration has basically killed the main financing mechanism for renewable energy, which was the investment tax credit. They luckily gave us a 6 months to a year, depending on how you want to do it, time frame in order to safe harbor projects. So inadvertently, they actually created a renewable energy boom, weirdly, in the United States, hence our 88 megawatts in the pipeline right now. White nationalism is on the rise. Racism is on the rise. We saw this very starkly in Minneapolis in 2020, but I don't have to tell Clevelanders what's going on with that. It's really bad, it's increasing, and people are finding it more acceptable to have these opinions and to voice them and to act on them. A lot of that has to do with our current administration. There's attacks on voting rights. We all know this, the recent decision from the Supreme Court. It's just another in a series of terrible decisions gutting our voting rights laws. The Supreme Court is now extremely conservative, 6-3. This is going to be for generations this way, unless we can do something about it, like stack the courts or figure out a different way to deal with this activist Supreme Court, honestly, right now. And then war and military spending. Once again, I'm from Iran. I don't need to tell you all about this too. We all know what's going on right now with wars. Pentagon wants a budget of 1.5 trillion with a T dollars for next year. By far the highest budget for our war machine. Also, this There's also the cutting of the social welfare net, public health stuff, public assistance. All that is being cut, and there's growing federal authoritarianism in general. And we went through this with ICE in Minneapolis recently, which I'm going to talk a little bit about in a second. And just in general, the foundations of our democracy right now are at risk. I think more than, at least in my life, I've ever experienced, and I think a lot of people sort of feel the same about that. But it's not all doom and gloom, right? There's things that are actually going well right now. Some of those things, including there's a rise in populism. Some of it is conservative populism, but a lot of it is not. And populism can lend itself one way or the other. It's up to us to push it which way we want to have it go. There's also a realization amongst, I think, the majority of people right now that the negative effects of the concentrations of wealth and power are not good for us. In fact, there's common just new names are coming up for this class. I've heard the Epstein class, these kind of things. Like, it is a very popular thing to not like concentrations of wealth right now, whether we're talking about individual people or we're talking about, large corporations. I can think of all the animosity, even on the MAGA right, towards large pharma, towards big ag, towards utility companies. I mean, it is not just a thing on the left anymore to be unfavorable towards large concentrations of wealth and big business in general. There's a growing distrust of politicians due to the dissatisfaction in the current political system. I think this is necessary. Like, we are not going to get change unless there is large-scale dissatisfaction with what's going on right now. Otherwise, we're just going to keep the status quo. So this is fertile ground to build off of right now. And then finally, well, not finally, but the left flank of the Democratic Party is also the only part of the Democratic Party with any energy right now. The rest of the party is stale, and their approval ratings are in the single digits for the party. The only part of the party that has any excitement that is growing is the left flank. And I think that's hopeful. There's also been, I think I mentioned this a little bit, but there has been a rise in the formation of co-ops and of unions participation. You can see all these small unions popping up all over the US, the Starbucks ones, you name it. I mean, there's unions popping up for everything, and there are co-ops popping up for everything, more and more now. People are becoming aware of this alternative way of doing things. So, why is cooperativism the thing we need right now? Well, most of these things I just mentioned that are going well are actually rooted in or heavily associated with cooperativism in one way or another. It is people working together in broad-based, usually democratic coalitions that are making these things, these positive things happen. Or at least it's the thought of that, right? The thought that concentrations of power and wealth need to be redistributed out broadly. There's also the fact that the concentrations of wealth and power that we are seeing right now, the only way they can be defeated is through other large concentrations of wealth and power or large, broad-based coalitions of lots of people. That's the only way to take these things on. And finally, broad-based democratic cooperation is what we need, and co-ops are the organized, formalized version of that. So, I'm just going to mention really quick, I'm not going to go through them as in like explain each one because I think a lot of people here know them and some of them, these are pretty much self-explanatory, but the principles, the cooperative principles. There's voluntary and open membership, democratic member control, member economic participation, autonomy and independence, education, training, and information, cooperation amongst co-ops, and concern for community. That's what co-ops are based on. These are the principles that we use to do our business. I'm going to talk a little bit about Minnesota and co-ops in Minnesota and my experience with those co-ops in Minnesota. Minnesota, I think you probably all heard, has a nickname, Land of 10,000 Lakes. They have several other alternative nicknames playing on that. One of them is Land of 10,000 Co-ops. There are a lot of co-ops in Minnesota. And I think the basis for this, the reason for this, is because in the 1850s and through the 1880s, late 1800s, our immigrant population came from Sweden, Norway, and Finland. And they were largely workers, and they were largely socialist, used to forming co-ops, used to working together against large concentrations of power. And this happened to a very large degree up on what we call the Iron Range in Minnesota, up by Lake Superior, where John Rockefeller and a bunch of others had large mining operations, and these were militant workers from the Scandinavian area. So this has sort of set the tone for co-ops in Minnesota. Skip ahead to the 1960s, the whole Bay Area movement with all the hippies. Everybody had their hippies from their local area go over there and participate, you know. We had ours from Minnesota go over there and participate too. They happened to be rural kids, rural hippies from Minnesota, went over there, and they first started what were called just group buys of groceries. They were thinking of new alternative structures for buying things and for economics and for living in general, and the first thing was group buys. So they would just buy in bulk, right, for everybody, healthy, good food, and they would distribute accordingly. Then these kids in Minnesota thought, you know what, I know a lot of farmers. Like, I'm from a place with a bunch of farmers, my dad has a farm, whatever it is. Let's go back to Minnesota and start stores where they're co-ops. So they did this. They went to Minneapolis, they hooked up with their farming connections, and they brought in food and started stores. There was one a block away from my house, all through the late 60s and 70s. These were co-ops. This is where the food co-op movement started in Minnesota, and it started originally as you had to actually work in the co-op, volunteer at least one day a week in order to be a member. You couldn't just sign up and pay some money and you were part of a co-op. You had to work. And one day you would be like the register, the cashier, or stocking shelves, and the next day you would be doing inventory, and the next day you'd be like a manager. So it was very egalitarian, and everybody got to do everything. Almost all the food was non-packaged, it was healthy, it was in bulk. And then in the 1970s, a new model came about, which was more of what we see today, which is I pay some money and I go in, and the food is healthy maybe, but it's expensive, it's packaged, it's from wherever, you know, all over the place. And there was what's called the co-op wars in Minnesota. And there's actually a really good documentary you can look up online called The Co-op Wars. It's a public television documentary. And it got pretty crazy with violence amongst hippies, amongst these groups that wanted the old school co-ops, the original vision of co-ops, versus this new sort of corporatized version where they actually had a manager, there was a hierarchical structure, the food cost a lot, and there was violence. It was absolutely crazy. It involved cults, like all kinds of stuff happened. And as you know, we can kind of see right now, the corporate version won out. And that's what we have for food co-ops all over the US right now, although I'm sure there are, you know, little versions of what used to be, including in Minnesota there are, but largely it has changed over to that model of co-op. So this sets the experience for like what happened in Minnesota. Oh, I have 5 minutes left. So let me talk about my neighborhood is Powderhorn Park. I live there. It is where George Floyd was murdered. Murdered 5 blocks from my house. During that period, we had a bunch of white supremacists from 3%ers to the new Boogaloo Boys come into our area and start violence and start harassing our citizens, and the cops wouldn't answer our calls. 911 wouldn't answer calls. They would not come to our neighborhood no matter what. This was a large swath of South Minneapolis. So we fended for ourselves. I helped create what was called the Powderhorn Safety Collective. We created a ton of mutual aid groups. The entire park, 60-acre park in front of my house, was basically like a homeless encampment where everybody volunteered and did social services and all these other things. It was a very heady time, and we got to know our neighbors really, really well through this process. Hence, forward 5 years later, ICE comes into Minneapolis. We had a muscle that was practiced. We knew what to do. So we got on Signal, we created our chats, we created our groups. The most famous of the, which you I'm sure see on TV, is the people who went around and chased ICE in their cars. They were a fraction of the people. That was just the most visible people. There were people doing everything. All of our immigrant neighbors were hiding. 3 on my block were taken. And we went out, we got them groceries, we took their kids to school, we did all their errands, we raised money for rent because they couldn't go to work, we raised money for utilities. All of that organizing was practiced from the 2020 uprisings and came to fruition for ICE. Once again, this is us using large grassroots democratic structures for community safety, mutual aid, fundraising, and informational sessions. This was our ad hoc version of addressing this issue. Cooperativism and collectivism and co-ops in general are a formalized version of this. We needed ad hoc versions of that for acute situations that arose when they arose, but they weren't meant to last. Already I see the ICE organization, community action coalitions. I'm still on like 5 different chats, but not the 40 I was on originally. We're still close, we still visit each other, but these things were not meant to last. They were meant to address acute situations happening at the time. Co-ops are not that. Co-ops are the formalized institutional version of that. Co-ops help with long-term goals versus short-term, ad hoc, deal with the acute situation. Both are needed, but co-ops tend to be geographically limited, they tend to be mission limited. But it's very necessary to have that if you want to sustain over time. Both are needed once again. You need the acute, deal with the situation as it is right there, but you also need the long-term vision with people working, people getting paid, people working together with a goal that's long-term, and you're going for it and you're not distracted by whatever is happening. You can jump in and do your version of that acute healing, that acute necessary need as a co-op too, but you have an overall vision that's long-term and you're moving towards that. I think that's what we need right now. We need both of those things. And what you all are doing right here is the institutionalized version of that. We all are. It's growing. And I think that what you guys are doing here is actually, dare I say, more admirable than what we're doing in Minneapolis. And why? Is because we kind of have it easy in our environment in Minneapolis. The politics are different. It's a blue state, and it's actually a quite progressive state, and Minneapolis is an extremely progressive city. You guys are in the belly of the beast. You guys are doing the hard work compared to us. And it's really admirable to see that. Because we're kind of coasting on this, like, you know, people get it in Minneapolis and Minnesota. Like, oh, co-op, yeah, I know all about this. This is good, I'm gonna sign up. You guys gotta do the work of reaching out and showing and proving and all that, and I admire that. And you're 7 years in, and look at how you're doing already. Look at this, this is all wonderful. We're 19 years in, right? So don't look at us as like, why aren't we there? No, you guys are doing great. For 7 years, we were still 4 people at 7 years. We didn't have a garden yet at 7 years. So I admire you. You guys are doing God's work, and keep it up in the belly of the beast. Happy 7th year anniversary.
Thank you, Pouya. Yeah, wow, so many lessons there. All right, y'all. Move to this part of the program where we're going to talk about an award that we've been giving out every year. We call it the Cleveland Owns Cooperator of the Year Award. This is to acknowledge somebody in our co-op community who is going above and beyond, helping us strengthen this movement, this ecosystem, to be bigger and better. In recent years, we've awarded this to the Woodhill Community Co-op, who's been working on a community laundry, that's right. And just last year to Ms. Mickey Smith, a dear friend of the co-op movement who's made incredible contributions. And this year, I'm so excited to announce this year's winner of the Cleveland Owns Cooperator of the Year Award, Mike Russell. Let's give it up for Mike. Come on up here, Mike. We're going to embarrass you. We're going to make Mike stand here while we embarrass him for a minute. Mike, appreciate all the contributions you make. Let me tell you all a little bit about the work that Mike does. In several fronts, Mike is a true leader in the co-op movement. Mike is an attorney at Legal Aid in the economic justice practice, where he supports many grassroots co-ops across the region. A lot of the work that we've been able to do at Cleveland Owns has only happened because of the work that Mike and his colleagues have put forward to make those efforts succeed. In addition to that, Mike was a fellow of the National Sustainable Economies Law Center, which is a group that's really a national leader in training lawyers to support the co-op movement. From that work, Mike helped start the statewide Cooperative Law Conference, which is an annual gathering or biannual gathering of legal professionals who have a focus on serving co-ops. Really, Mike is at the vanguard of seeing this support for co-ops institutionalized in a whole new sector. And we would absolutely, as Cleveland Owns, I can speak definitively, would absolutely not be where we are if not for Mike's persistence. So let's give it up for Mike. I'm also able to speak with some of Mike's colleagues who are thrilled that he's receiving this award and had some beautiful things to say about their experience working with Mike. So I'd like to further embarrass Mike. Yes, so from another co-op lawyer who does important work around the state says, Mike has been a consistent presence in this work from my earliest days in cooperative law. He brings real curiosity and creativity to every engagement, and he's an inspiring peer, a model for junior practitioners, and a thought leader in the space. Another colleague here from Legal Aid had to say, Mike is at once a careful, creative, and generous attorney. He takes time to talk through knotty problems with his colleagues and listens with all his attention. He cares deeply about economic empowerment, especially through community ownership. When he encounters, this is my favorite part, when he encounters an unfamiliar area of law, he creates a binder about it and learns all he can. That sounds right, actually. And finally, on a personal front, this colleague has to say, if you want to watch curiosity and joy in action, please ask Mike about movies or music. I keep a page in my journal just to record Mike's media recommendations. They're often esoteric, occasionally not my taste, but they are always very high quality. Let's give it up for Mike Russell. So Mike, we have a little award here. Yeah, let's give you this award and take a picture. All right, thanks for your work, Mike. Do you want to share a few words? I can take the flower. Yeah, okay.
All right, thank you guys. Really quickly, I want to thank everybody for this award. It's really quite an honor. And it's such a, I'm a really lucky guy in a lot of different ways, and it's such a privilege to work with the crew at Cleveland Owns, my comrades on the board and the staff, people who use their imagination and their labor to remake the world every day and to push the future forward. It's such a privilege. I'm also privileged to work with an organization, Legal Aid, that gives me the time and the resources to do this kind of work. And maybe most of all, I'm so privileged to work with my colleagues at Legal Aid, including Catherine Donnelly, who's here today, who I learn from every day and who I work closely with on so many of our projects. So thank you, Catherine. Finally, I'd like to transition to the self-indulgent portion of my comments. I have something to read because we talked at the last Cleveland Owns Boards meeting. We talked about people you'd want to meet at a dinner table, and the English art critic and writer and artist John Berger came up. And I wanted to read something that he wrote a very long time ago. I think it's pertinent to what we're talking about today. It's short, I promise. Okay. If you draw a series of parallel lines closely, here's this. If you draw a series of parallel lines closely together, and then another series across them at an angle, you have the simplest visual example of the dialectical process. Cross-hatching, as artists call it. You have the first series of lines, then you have the second series in opposition to the first. But out of that, you get a series of diamonds. Now, if you look at these diamonds, remembering that every one has to be drawn, you are overwhelmed by the length and complexity of the task. The diamonds are like the future we work for. Yet courage, the first series of lines, is there. All we have to do is cross them. And that's the work that Cleveland Owns does. that crosses the lines to make the diamonds to push the future forward. So I'm lucky to be a part of it. Thank you.
Hey. All right. We are almost at the end, but wanted to do something real quick. Let's see. All right. Any credit union members in the house? Okay.
What you doing?
How about lovers of community dinners?
You are cheating.
Hey,
Okay. One last question. Anybody compost with Rust Belt riders?
where's that worker co-op?
Okay, all right. Bingo. Okay, so if you participated in bingo and you got any line of 5, make sure you see Prerna after the event, after the music, so you'll be entered to win the raffle. And if you don't, it just increases my chances of winning, so that's fine too. All right, fam, before we head out, can we give it up one more time for everybody who helped make today possible? Thank you all for showing up with your energy, your presence, your brilliance, your curiosity, your politics, your people, and your appetite. In a time when so many forces are trying to isolate us from one another, gatherings like this matter. Community matters, joy matters, practicing democracy together matters. I also want to shout out a few folks who helped hold this whole thing together. First of all, the Cleveland Owns staff. Let's give it up one more time for the Cleveland Owns staff. I want to send a whole lot of love to Holly Davenport and that brown girl Spice for blessing us with this incredible food. Shout out to my main man, Julian Kahn, for capturing the memories and the vibes today. Much love to our graphic designer, Winter, for help shaping the visual language of this work. Deep appreciation to Colleen and everyone here at St. Paul's Community Church for hosting us, being such generous hosts in the effort. I also want to acknowledge our sponsors and sustaining partners whose support helps keep this work alive and moving. SOPEC, Equal Exchange, Northeast Ohio Worker Center, Resource Generation, Meadow City, Northeast Ohio Coalition for the Homeless, New Economy Coalition, and Weiner PC, and the Democracy Collaborative. Can we show them all a little bit of love? Yeah. And before we leave, I do want to extend one more invitation. Well, the first of 2 invitations, actually. So 2 years ago, Cleveland Owns launched our Sustaining Supporters campaign, and today we've grown that community to over $1,278 in recurring monthly support. And this year, we're trying to grow that to $1,550 every month. Now, I'm not trying to guilt anyone into giving. We appreciate your presence just as much as we would appreciate your bread. But if you believe in the work you heard about today, if you believe workers deserve ownership, if you believe communities deserve control over their resources, shaping their lives, if you believe economic democracy is worth fighting for, we'd love for you to become a sustaining supporter. Because movements are sustained by relationships, by trust, by shared commitment, by people deciding they want to help keep something beautiful and necessary alive. And finally, we are incredibly honored to close out today with the Liberation Band, who have been helping fortify our spirits through movement music in a difficult political moment. So stick around, dance a little, hug somebody, meet somebody new, build some conspiracy and cooperation before you leave. And there's also, 2 upcoming events. Solar School is a 6-week hands-on cooperative learning program that covers solar politics, solar site assessment, and solar financing. This is our 2nd session, right? Yeah. Last year, 24 people attended. The first session starts June 23rd. See Craig. All right. Also, Co-op U. If you have an idea for starting a co-op, join Cleveland Owns for this 12-week business incubation program starting in August. See Bogdan to learn more. Do we have anybody who's been through Co-op U? Yeah, give it up. Bingo again. All right, y'all. So stick around, get home safe, keep organizing, keep imagining, keep building, and most importantly, keep the faith, baby. Sending you all a whole lot of love and peace and soul power.